Hello again, my name's Sean Keogh. I'm the prospective parliamentary candidate for UKIP for Erewash constituency, and I've been doing a series of talks on the UKIP manifesto. Today I want to look at the subject of overseas aid or foreign aid, and this is something which David Cameron introduced under the coalition government of 2010 to 2015, largely under the influence of Nick Clegg. And what they did was they said that 0.7% of gross national income will be given in overseas aid. Now, that may not sound much, but that's £14 billion per annum. Now that, to put it in its perspective, that is twice what we pay for our entire policing bill. So we spend £7 billion a year on the police forces of the entire United Kingdom and twice as much on foreign aid. Now, again, you might say, nevertheless, that 0.7% surely isn't much, but you must understand it's the gross national income that's being measured here, not tax receipts. It's not even the gross domestic product, it's the gross national income. That is much higher than tax receipts, and it's higher than GDP or gross domestic product, because gross national income is your gross domestic product. That means everything produced in the United Kingdom, everything earned, everything manufactured, every service given, every kind of financial activity of any kind added up. That's the gross domestic product. Well, then you add that to the net income from overseas. What that means is you add on all dividends, profits, rents and other things, other money coming into the UK from abroad, okay? Add that all together, the GDP and that, and you get the gross national income. So you can see that's a very big number and vastly, vastly higher than the tax receipts that the Chancellor of the Exchequer has in his pocket. And so therefore, you can see how it's a much, much higher percentage of tax receipts than it is of gross national income. In the same way that you might look at your own wages, you have your gross wage, you have your net wages that you take home. So your gross wage would be like the gross domestic product, but added onto that would be anything you might earn from savings or investments or anything else, from a rent, from a property you own or anything else. Add it on top, and that's what the percentage is levied on. That's why it's so high. It doesn't sound much, but it's enormous. So on top of all that, the problem is in who we give it to and for what, because this money in the main, at least a vast proportion of it, it goes to corrupt governments. Our government insists on giving it to foreign governments for them to distribute. A child wouldn't be so naive as to do that. And therefore, as well, much of it is stolen by fraudsters within those governments. And a great deal of it goes to Muslim countries, which is effectively what Dimitude is about. We are making ourselves taxpayers or givers of money to Islamic countries. And we're doing it voluntarily without even being pressed into it or compelled. But even if the money isn't stolen by these foreign governments, a great proportion of this money is used for arms, even if it doesn't find its way into Swiss bank accounts. But to cap it all, we even give aid, can you believe this, to China and India, both of whom are nuclear powers and both of whom have space programs. I mean, you just couldn't make it up, could you? A child would not be so foolish as to do this. Now, UKIP is going to scrap this whole thing and return the £14 billion to the Treasury to fund things like policing and the NHS and defence and education and so forth. But please bear in mind, we're not talking about a one-off capital payment. I mean, that would be big enough. We're talking about £14 billion every year and rising. Now, you add that up for a few years and you see the vastness of the scale of this. because even in 1 year, if we were to return this money to the United Kingdom, instead of having 1 police force, we could have 3 police forces. That's what it means. It's that big. And if you were to do this year after year after year, the combined capital effect on what, in terms of what we could build, hospitals, schools, you name it, all sorts of infrastructure projects, new railway lines, new road, everything else will be enormous. Moreover, the money that would be invested in those things would be invested within the United Kingdom and would thus have a knock-on effect on aggregate demand, because the wages of the people doing the work that we get them to do in the UK would produce tax, and they would spend things and increase sales for other companies, and it would be increasing economic activity here. Whereas the economic aid that we give abroad, the overseas aid, is a net outflow out of the UK and never returns. Now, is this stingy? Is this a hard-hearted policy like Ebenezer Scrooge? No, it isn't, because you can only be generous with your own money. You can't be generous with other people's money. And what this is about is a bunch of PC zealots wanting to force you to let them spend your money doing what they want to do with it. What we should be doing is private individuals funding such charitable work as we wish to fund, where we wish to do it. And I would say mostly local charities which you can keep an eye on, or helping relatives, or helping friends, or helping the poor in your area, or helping national charities or international charities if you wish, which you choose to give to and which you can keep an eye on. Ones which don't pay their chief executives hundreds of thousands of pounds. Like David Miliband runs a charity and he gets paid more than 3 times what the Prime Minister gets. Now, what conceivable justification is there for that? And that's commonplace within these big charities. But also, the money that's given to this department that spends it abroad and is administered by complete incompetence very, very frequently, with no business experience. Many of them couldn't run a fish and chip shop. They've got no experience. They're just politically correct zealots with a desire to do things that they want to do with your money. And that's why, I suppose, there's so much of a focus on giving to Islamic countries, because they're wanting to make a point and prove a point. They want to rub our noses in it. They want to give the money to these countries in the forlorn hope that this will cause these countries to like us and to be fond of us. No, it won't. Many of these countries are very hostile to us, and I say, let them hate us for free. Let's not pay them for it. Now, what should we be doing as a nation? Things that have to be done. Disaster relief, yes. Now that used to be done by a sub-department of the Foreign Office, and that should be how it's done. When there's an earthquake, when there's a typhoon, when there's a great fire and so on. Yes, send out the Army and the Air Force and the Navy to help in that. And that's of course right and proper. But that's how we used to do, and UKIP wants to continue with that. But not this absurd outpouring of money to silly, silly destinations. So private giving as well should continue and will be given tax relief as it has been in the past. Because individuals know best about what to do with their charitable giving. Anyway, thank you for listening. Please, it really helps if you share this and get it out to other people, share it to groups, share it to your friends. That really helps. Thank you very much.